Hello, Internet. Welcome to the Chiller7. Man, oh man, I just burnt myself out trying to play through Fire Emblem Three Houses again, playing through the Golden Deer route. I am trying to do everything there is to do in the game before the DLC comes out so I can fully appreciate everything that Three Houses has to offer, right? I love Three Houses. I adore the game, but I do think the game has lots of very crippling flaws. And one of those flaws I'm beginning to realize is that I suspected this from the moment I finished the game, actually, or while I was still playing through. When I learned how the root system actually works, I was very skeptical about the root system and how the story deviates depending on how you choose a house. I didn't think that in and of itself was very interesting, and I think I was right about that. Like, I was downright baffled at just how much of the content in the Golden Deer route is reused in the church route. Like, you get a lot of the same cutscenes, you get a lot of the same maps, you get a lot of the same situations. Like, really, the major difference I heard going into this was that, like, oh, the Golden Deer just has Claude there. But I think there are a bit more differences than that. But that just raises another problem, in that, like, you can't just play one route and expect to get the whole story in this. Like, you can't just choose who you want to side with and then go through the campaign and then sort of experience the story, like a single coherent story, right? You have to play all four routes in order to understand the lore, the background, what's going on with specific characters, to be honest with you, because I've played the church route and the Golden Deer route, and I still have no idea what happened to Dimitri. Like, I don't know how he lost his eye. I don't know why he went insane. I don't know why he hates Edelgard. Like, just by the specific way in which I played this game, like, I somehow still don't know what drives the core conflict. And it really is the core conflict. Like, the conflict between Edelgard and Dimitri is kind of the major thing of the game, but it's so I don't want to say half-assed. It's so underemphasized in other routes, right? Like, if you're going the church route, your focus is sort of like finding Rhea and, like, sort of going around and, like, fighting all these people. You end up going up against the Empire. That's the thing I don't get about this too. It's called Three Houses, right? Like, the selling point was that there were three different factions, but when you get right down to it, there are only two factions, right? The Empire and everyone else. Like, when you get right down to it, there is no reason that everyone else should not be fighting the Empire. Like, in the Golden Deer route in particular, this really sticks out. There is no reason for you to be fighting Fargus, like, at all. Like, they even say, like, going into the battle, oh, we didn't engage them because there's no reason for us to fight. Well, then why do you fight them in Grondor? Why do you fight them in that field? Why do you not just team up and kill Edelgard? It would have been so easy to just team up with Dimitri, maybe just go around Edelgard and just stab her from the back, right? You don't need to meet her in battle on this open field and end up killing people from Fargus who did nothing wrong. Like, why are we fighting Fargus? It was just Three Houses, I think, more than any other Fire Emblem game I can think of, suffers from, like, this very severe sort of it's essentially the opposite of Fates, right? Where well, not opposite in this instance. It is the opposite of Fates, but not in this. This is what I'm talking about. Three Houses has legitimately engaging background lore and themes they could have used to build one of the most fascinating and interesting stories in Fire Emblem canon. But it's so complex. There's so much going on. They don't emphasize any of it enough. Like, I was really surprised. The crest system. This is a good example. The Golden Deer route essentially has the point of the Golden Deer route is that it essentially builds up to a final battle against a resurrected nemesis, the man that Saros had to brutally murder at the Red Canyon at the before the game starts, like 1,000 years ago, right before the church was even established. You're going out there. Here I am spoiling the Golden Deer route. Spoilers. But it honestly doesn't matter because it's so unengaging and so uninteresting. But okay, so essentially what you're doing is you're going up against this ancient evil that you need to defeat, but it's not built up in the story well enough. Like it's sort of in the background. Like you're vaguely aware of Nemesis, you're vaguely aware of the 10 elites, you're vaguely aware of the relics, you're vaguely aware of the history of the Church of Saros. You're aware that the church isn't exactly honest with like their history. You're aware of all of this, but it's not really built up in an interesting way in this route, right? It's built up throughout other routes in other ways, and it's very, very easy to just sort of like not care about it. It's kind of interesting. The things that stick with me the most are things that aren't actually prevalent in this path, right? Like in this path, right? In the Golden Deer route, I was mostly engaged with Claude, his personality, and how affable he is compared to like Edelgard and Dimitri. This is someone who's much more grounded in reality. He is the only one of the main factions that isn't completely insane. Well, not openly insane anyway. We'll get to that in a bit, but Claude is a bit. Claude's a lot more easygoing. He's a lot more popular, legitimately popular with his people, right? Like he has no real. He's the opposite of Edelgard. There's a lot of instances in this game where like a lot of characters seem to be foils to other ones. So in this case, in a lot of different ways, like the cast of Three Houses is probably the most multi-layered and complex in any Fire Emblem game ever, which is one of the reasons I'm so hesitant to criticize this game in too harshly. But Claude is essentially a foil to Edelgard in this Golden Deer route, in that like he expressly states that he and Edelgard have a lot of the same goals, right? And that like Claude is not a believer in the church. He doesn't believe in the goddess. He doesn't believe that like Fodlan. He believes Fodlan should be united, right? He's all about like doing all this very specific stuff, right? He wants to put himself up. He believes in a lot of the same things that Edelgard does, but he doesn't take it to the same ridiculous extreme. He's much more reasonable about it, I would say. Like, he sort of creates this situation to sort of establish trust between the Almirans and the rest of Fodlan. He sort of, that's kind of his overall goal, and he does sort of succeed in that, I think. He doesn't need to go to war with anyone or start a war. He just sort of like takes the situation and sort of like spins it to his own benefit. And it works for the most part. Nothing about Claude. If I have a problem with Claude, he's not a big enough player in this Three Houses thing. Like, it goes back to what I was saying. Like, he's a foil to Edelgard, right, in that regard, where like he has the same goals but doesn't quite take it to the same extreme. But again, he's not like involved in the conflict. He doesn't even have like complete control of the alliance. You have to like fight some members of the alliance to get them to come over. Like there's some sort of divide between the alliance lords, and like the first thing you have to do is like stop the infighting, and then you have to go fight the Empire, and then it's just oops, my alarm. I am just so Three Houses, Golden Deer should have been all about like building up the 10 elites. They should have been about building up Nemesis. They should have been like uncovering the history of the church. Like I think that's what they were going for. That's what they wanted to do, but like it doesn't really come off that way. It feels a lot like, it really does feel like in a lot of respects, Three Houses was rushed, which is kind of bizarre to say considering how long this game is. But like there's so much with the pacing and just some of the way the lore is explained that just this is stuff that really should have been established very early on. Like you sort of, in the very beginning, the opening cutscene, it's so well handled, right? Like building up the Red Canyon, like Saros, like that battle with Nemesis. It's so interesting and so engaging, but then they don't really explain it at all. They have to like sort of explain all this other ridiculous bullshit, like the crest system, like relics. There's so much going on at Three Houses. It doesn't give any room for the idea to breathe. That's probably what they should have done, is that they should have taken each route and emphasized a certain aspect of the plot. Like they shouldn't have you going and fight the those who slither in the dark in like every route. Like they should have just had you, I don't know, do it in one route. Like explain who they are, their history, their motivations, their role in creating the relics, essentially. That should have been the Golden Deer route, and then it could have ended with that battle against Nemesis. And then you could have used the church route to explain your origins and like the history of the goddess and stuff like that. And then like Dimitri and Edelgard is like the core conflict within the country. It's like, again, there is no reason for Claude to be fighting Fargus, like in any circumstance. Like there is no reason, like he shouldn't just be protecting his territory, which is what happens in Crimson Flower. Like I do think it kind of makes a bit more sense when you're not playing as the Alliance to fighting like all three factions. But yeah, in the Alliance route, it's kind of notoriously like there is no reason for this. Like you should have approached Fargus, you should have teamed up against Edelgard. Like there are so many instances where like, why does Fargus not join the Alliance? Like, why did they not approach us? Were they not aware we were fighting the Empire? Were they not like, did they not care? Like, why did no one think that like, hey, Claude's out there. Why don't we just reach out to him and at least try to form this alliance? Like instead of just marching against the Empire, like really that was your brilliant move to just charge the Empire and lose? It's just like, you didn't even lose against the Empire. You lost against the Alliance, who you had no reason to be fighting. It's just, the three-way battle is one of those things that sounds cool, but yeah, it kind of falls flat. Like you don't do it in the church route either, which is kind of an interesting decision. Again, I guess you're a neutral in that one, but you still end up fighting the Empire no matter what. Like in 3 of the 4 routes, you are fighting the Empire. When you're not part of the evil Empire, you are fighting the Empire, like no matter what. It's just, this is why the route system, I think, kind of falls flat. Like you're going through the exact same plot with the exact same plot points, a lot more of like the fake out, right? Like there's a scene there are scenes in part 1 that sort of like are used sort of like, oh, maybe your house leader is the Flame Emperor. In one of those 3 instances, it is true, but like the other 2 are like fake outs. It's just, this is definitely my most desired request from Fire Emblem going forward, is that we need to get rid of the route system. We don't need it. It's not necessary. It's kind of bogging down a lot of interesting ideas, to be honest with you, because I was thinking, like, you don't actually need to have all 3. You don't actually need to have a route system for this concept. Like, you could have just been a teacher in part 1 and then sort of been a neutral party in part 2 and then sort of work through the plot that way. I just maybe the route system could have happened in part 2, but like not in part 1. Like there's not enough divergent content to like justify it in part 1. I don't know why they seriously have you going through all of it in part 1. Like part one should have emphasized that like everyone is at the academy are friends, and then part two should have been like everyone going to war with each other. Like, you do get that a little bit, but not to the extent that I would like. Yeah, that's my opinion. Is that like part one should have been like the same. Part one should have been like condensed. You shouldn't have to play through part one every playthrough. Like you should be able to start straight from part two, leave off, pick up where you left off with like your maxed out units and stuff like that from all the houses, and then sort of like choose which faction you want to go along with. Right? You shouldn't have had to. There's so much about the situation. Like, I don't get why Claude and Edelgard seem to have like the same sort of ideas. Hey, Teach, let's meet up here in 5 years. That's just really bizarre. That's just a really bizarre specific request to like, it makes sense for Edelgard, I think. Maybe it's because I first heard it from her, but to hear it from Claude in like the same exact situation, in the same exact context, it was just weird, right? It's just... There's too much in this game that's too similar, regardless of what you do or which house leader you pick. Like, you don't feel like the house leader has all that much influence over what's going on, especially Claude. Like Edelgard, you can kind of argue, it's like, she's the antagonist. She's the main driving force of the plot. She's the main character almost. But Claude doesn't do shit. He's a side character. Like even in his own segment, he's sort of like, I'll just go and Hilda come up with a plan. Like he always talks about like, I'm Claude von Regan. I'm a man with a plan. And then he sort of like never actually comes up with any plans. Like even the Golden Scheme, like 90% of that was Hilda. Like she came up with the general aspect of it, like the general idea of it. It was Claude who sort of like brought in the Almirans, but other than that, he doesn't do shit. Like, I like Claude as like a person, as a character. He's really, really charismatic. He's not like Edelgard, where like I hate her, but I kind of like her. Like, I do legitimately like Claude for the most part. When he's not spurging about like, we need to tear down the borders to our country. Like when he's not talking about like his weird ass like philosophy and beliefs, like. He's pretty likable. I would say he's like probably a Chad, to be honest with you. But there are so many fucking chicks that I think he could be with. Holy shit. But Claude is just, as an actual character in the plot, not all that interesting. Again, I don't think you really needed to have this route system. Three Houses really, really liked it. I love the game. I played through it twice in less than 6 months. So you know I like it a lot. Like I put like 50 hours into it now, but like, yeah, there are a lot of cracks in this story structure. One that I hope they fix. And I do hope with future Fire Emblem games, they will put in effort to make the game less padded and, overall shorter, because I don't think the game needed to be 50 hours long. Like, I thought I turned that off. Let's see. What else was going to talk about today? Let's see. Yeah, I'm in kind of a rush. I'm already dressed. I just thought I would stream a little bit, get some thoughts out there, because there's a lot going on. The Chinese Supervirus. Yeah, it's going to kill us all, man. I am 100% certain this is going to be a disaster. I do think this is going to be like... it's going to be some kind of epidemic. I'm not sure whether it's going to be relegated to China or what, because I do think that like it's not going to be as bad. It's going to get under control under some point. Like the issue is just like when that's going to happen. Is it going to be like after like 50 million people die, or what is it like? I don't know. I don't know. But I think that there are going to be some I think people are over exaggerating how terrible the Supervirus is. A lot of people are like, I know, don't trust the Chinese government. I know that. But like I have seen footage from there, and although people aren't like out in the streets or anything like that, because the city is under quarantine, it's not like people are dying, or at least not from what I could see. It just feels like there is a lot of worry. There's a lot of anxiety. People are worried about getting sick. But I hope that it's already under control, or that like a cure is being worked on, and like, or at least it's not spreading any further. We'll have to see how this escalates here. I'm not sure what to expect going forward. We could expect anything, to be honest with you. Yes. There's a lot. Yes, I'm very concerned. So hopefully we can get this resolved. I woke up sick yesterday, and I thought I had it. I am legitimately concerned, but yeah, I think that's all I had to say about this. I am keeping an eye on it. Yes, in other news, we have a lot of major video game bombs over the past couple of days. I cannot find. I really need to find a way to keep track of everything, because I honestly don't know if I can really talk about everything that happened, because there are so many disasters coming from third parties and PlayStation and Xbox. It's impossible to keep track of all of them. Like, everything's selling less than it used to. Companies everywhere are panicking. There's sort of like unease in the air. I'm always seeing articles like, Yakuza 7 underperformed the already underperforming Yakuza 6. Like, I read articles saying Yakuza 6 didn't do too well, and Yakuza 7 did even worse. Let's start there with good old Yakuza 7. The game that completely botched the combat system by making it turn-based and sort of making it something it wasn't. And the fans were not happy. And I do think a lot of people were sort of coming out here and saying that, it's something different. It's something new. Don't you want something new? Don't you want something different? We don't want the same old thing. But I don't think this is the way to do it. Like, if they wanted to do something new, if they legitimately wanted to do something new, why did they not make a new IP? Why did they shove it into Yakuza 7? Like, why did they shove it into Yakuza? Like, why did they replace the protagonist, replace them with this other guy, and sort of radically change the entire combat of the game? Like, making it turn-based, it's just, complete misstep on Sega's part. And a lot of people try to damage control this. I do legitimately think that people damage controlling this were shills, because I don't think Yakuza fans as a whole were really excited about the prospect of changing the combat system. Like, Yakuza fans would have wanted the combat system to be better, right? Like, just reinvent it, sort of give it more fluidity. Like, don't make it feel so choppy. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, Yakuza feels kind of stiff in a lot of ways. It feels kind of outdated. Like, make it feel more fluid and more natural. Like, that is what I think Yakuza fans would want. Like, Yakuza fans did not want the series to become a turn-based RPG. Like, that's not what Yakuza fans wanted, right? Because I am a Yakuza fan. Like, as a Yakuza fan, I was like, well, make the combat better. Make changes. Like, this is not what I expected or wanted from the franchise. Like, in fact, the major thing I wanted from Yakuza was to see the series go multi-plat, to make the jump to Switch and continue to be supported on Switch in the future. Like, there's no reason for all the Yakuza releases in the past several years to not be on Switch already. Like, 0 should have been on there already. Kiwami 1 and 2, the re-release of 3, all of those should have been on there. I think 4 has been re-released as well. 4 and 5 should be on as well, but like just start releasing games on Nintendo consoles. Like, you don't need to like release everything on there, but at least get things on there and get regular releases. Like, you don't need what is the logic behind not having Yakuza on Switch? Like, they've never been able to justify it. They've always been sort of giving excuses and like justifying it and just refusing to do it, right? And I think it's finally coming to bite them. And they're releasing all this shit on PlayStation, like the Fist of the North Star spinoff, like Judgment, like Yakuza 7, Yakuza 6, Kiwami. They're putting out too much shit to a single audience and not really branching out. Like, and I think it's finally come back to bite them, where like the Yakuza audience has kind of lost interest in the formula. Like, they've milked it too much. They haven't evolved. They haven't done anything new. They just sort of rehashed the same general thing over and over and over and over and over and over, and haven't made any meaningful changes that people can actually appreciate. Like, at this point, the major change they need to fall back on is that they need to get rid of the PlayStation exclusivity. They need to go multi-plat. And Kingdom Hearts has got this right. Kingdom Hearts there has been talk that a story so far is coming to Switch, which is a major step forward for Kingdom Hearts. Like, this should have happened years ago. Like, Kingdom Hearts 3 should have been a launch title for Switch. Not a launch title for Switch, but it should have come out on Switch first, right? We should have been getting Kingdom Hearts games on Switch ever since the Switch came out, okay? We should have been getting more Kingdom Hearts games on Nintendo consoles throughout the entire lifespan. There was no real justification for it. To see a story so far, which I believe is a compilation of all the games before Kingdom Hearts 3 on Switch, would be a great, great thing. That's what Yakuza should have done, is that they should have released an entire collection of games on Switch to sort of build hype for future releases, to build an audience on Switch, to get to build a fan base on this Nintendo platform. You can't simply say that, like, well, our audience isn't on Switch. Well, your audience isn't on Switch because you're not supporting the Switch. I don't understand why developers think that's a reasonable excuse. And it's a major reason as to why I no longer support other platforms, is because any company that cannot get a game up and running on Switch is incompetent and shouldn't be supported. And Yakuza, I think, is showing signs of stagnation and not growing, right? Like, again, I love Yakuza. I love Kingdom Hearts, or at least I love the first Kingdom Hearts. I love Yakuza 5. These are series that I am interested in playing, and yet they refuse to support my console of choice. And if you don't do that, like, why in the world should I support you? I don't know. I don't understand why you would ever expect me to go out and buy a PS4 for a single game. And it really has reached that point where it really does feel like third-party developers are holding their biggest IPs hostage on PlayStation hardware in order to justify owning a PlayStation. Like, Square Enix does this with Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. Capcom does it with Street Fighter V and like all their fighting game franchises. What's another example? Konami used to do it with Metal Gear back when they actually used to make video games. Excuse me, I'm really thirsty. I've had this bottle of green tea sitting right in front of me the entire time, and I haven't drank from it yet. So, oh, that's good. That's good. Perfect. Lipton green tea, perfect for ranting about Nintendo. But we're at the point now where we can't really expect any major new third-party games to ever be released for PlayStation because they're always going to be announced like 5 years ahead of time, and they're going to be underwhelming when they do finally come out. Like we've talked about this in the past, like Sony's E3 2015, the one they won, right? That joke where they announced Shenmue 3, The Last Guardian. What else did they announce? Final Fantasy 7R, which still is not out yet. Pretty much all of the games they announced at that show were disappointing, but because they were exciting announcements, they won E3 2015. Even though those games took so long to come out and weren't all that interesting when they did. That's going to be what's going to happen with PS5, I think. It's going to mostly be ports. It's going to mostly be like, buy a PS5 to get exciting new content later on down the line. It's taking entire console generations to make AAA games these days. It's not an enticement to get people to buy new consoles. By suggesting that there's going to be something good here eventually, right? No, just release your games on Nintendo Switch. That's all you should be doing. Like, I am not buying a PS5. I haven't even bought a PS4. Like, why would I do that? Yes. Konami did make Contra for Switch, but it's Contra for Switch. It is a fake Contra game. It's super budget. It's underwhelming. Nobody cares about it. Unless it's to make fun of how shitty it was. I was not impressed with Contra for Switch. I didn't play it. I played the demo. I don't think it was bad as people made it out to be, actually. But the problem is that companies are not putting their full weight behind Nintendo Switch. They should be making like all sorts of games for Nintendo Switch, like big budget, like games for niche audiences, games for mainstream audiences, games from a lot of different franchises. Like, they shouldn't just be throwing shit at the wall and then just hoping it sticks. You know what I mean? I just Contra, I think. Konami needs to get their shit together. Like, they need to start making games again. I think people. So Kingdom Hearts 3 saw its DLC release this weekend, and I think this kind of speaks volumes about the current state of Kingdom Hearts in that list. Like, highly anticipated release got was it a 69 on Metacritic? I'm looking at it now. I just saw it, but let's see. Bring up Kingdom Hearts. Okay, Kingdom Hearts 3. People were not impressed with the Remind PS4 game 2020. Yep. The first Kingdom Hearts release of 2020. Remind is let's see, what was it? The other tale that unfolded during the climax of Kingdom Hearts 3. It got a 69 on Metacritic, which is like unfathomably low for a Kingdom Hearts game. It's not impressing people at all. I think the only reason Kingdom Hearts 3 got as high of a score as it did was because it was Kingdom Hearts 3. It finally came out after over a decade of waiting. We finally got Kingdom Hearts 3, and there's something about the number 3 that just kills a lot of these iconic third-party franchises, right? Like Half-Life 3, Kingdom Hearts 3, Shenmue 3, Mass Effect 3. Like, it's always the 3 that just straight up kills it. Like, 3 might do well, but it'll like kill the entire momentum of the series. Like, it derails everything, and people aren't exactly thrilled about what happens next. Like, Andromeda did badly. BioWare as a whole might sink because of Andromeda. It was that bad. And Anthem, like everything else they do too. The general rule seems to be this third game comes out after a lot of hype and publicity, like disappoints hardcore fans, and it sort of just dies off from there, right? This is what happened with 3, right? Kingdom Hearts 3 underwhelmed people compared to 2. A lot of people bought into 3. They were underwhelmed by 3. It wasn't as good as 2. And now I think we're at this point where a lot of people, myself included, straight up are not interested in playing more. Like, I don't think 3 is 3 sort of killed Kingdom Hearts. And this DLC of just having like super bosses, it's not resonating with the fan base at all. Like, I don't think mainstream audiences are really interested in playing $30 for an expansion just for a couple of harder bosses. And I think there are some hardcore Kingdom Hearts fans, the sort of people who like legitimately think that Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix is the best action game ever made, who are insisting that this DLC is good. But I don't think most people are really buying into that. I think most people buy Kingdom Hearts because of like the atmosphere, the story, the personality, the combat, like not necessarily the super difficult, super boss fights at the end of the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was a Kingdom Hearts fan long before I could beat like the super bosses at the end of 1. Do you know what I mean? Like I loved the games. Like, that was actually when I loved the games the most. And when like I couldn't beat those bosses, but now that I can, now that I have beaten Sephiroth, the Ice Titan, Kurt Zisa, the Phantom, I think it's called, that thing at the Neverland Clock Tower. Like, now that I can do that, the series has kind of lost a lot of its magic for me. It's not like what it used to be, clearly. And I think most people kind of agree with me. I think most people do agree that like the glory days, the golden age of Kingdom Hearts is behind us. There's not really anything more they can add to the series. There's no more like classic Disney films to incorporate into it. Like, they kind of stripped away the classic Disney elements to begin with. And now they're sort of, I think that what they're going to do is they're going to try and make a new Final Fantasy game with the Kingdom Hearts engine and try to migrate the Kingdom Hearts fan base over to that. That's kind of what I'm hearing is going to happen, but that's not what people, I don't think that's going to work. Like, I think it's going to be like this sort of another Kojima situation in which like this creator who's gotten way too much control over an IP and a franchise is going to try to make something new and it's going to fail. Like that's kind of my impression at this point, is that like I have no optimism at all for what Nomura is going to do with this hypothetical new Final Fantasy game, this new Final Fantasy Kingdom Hearts crossover. And that's someone who that's coming from someone who would want, who actually explicitly wanted Kingdom Hearts to be more like Final Fantasy, right? Like Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts should have had more Final Fantasy elements in it. It should have been more in line with Final Fantasy games. Maybe we shouldn't have had Sora be the main character in 2. I don't know what they're gonna do. Like, I really don't. They definitely can't continue the Kingdom Hearts storyline because it's too convoluted. No one can follow along with it. It's too ridiculous. It's kind of reached the point where like I don't think anybody really cares anymore, right? And I think the DLC scores reflect that. I don't think. I think Kingdom Hearts as a series is done, unfortunately, until it gets rebooted, which I'm sure it will happen eventually. Until they can reuse a lot of the same Disney movies again in like a completely different continuity, I don't think they're going to be able to reach the same success they did with Kingdom Hearts 3. Like 3 took too long to make, and it wasn't good enough to really justify the wait. Like, it was no Breath of the Wild is what I'm getting at here. Like, there was more of a growth between 2 and 1, between I think there were between 2 and 3, to be completely legitimately honest with you. Like, I don't think 3 really brought all that much new to the table. I think Contra could have been good if it like was handled with more respect, but like everything I've seen from it, everything I've heard from like feedback from fans and stuff like that, like nothing about it made me very enthusiastic. I did play the demo, and I don't think I liked it very much. Budget games can be very good, like they should be very good, to be honest with you. But like, there's a difference between like using a budget because you're skilled and don't need the money, and just because you're cheap. Like having a low budget just because you're cheap. And I think Contra sort of, Super Bomberman R as well, I think they sort of went this route of just being as cheap as possible. And it kind of really bogs down the games a bit. I suppose Contra is probably still more preferable to something like Contra Road Corps is probably still more preferable compared to something like The Last of Us Part 2 or God of War 2018 or anything like that. But that's really not saying very much. But I don't. Maybe I should play Road Corps. Like I have not actually played the final game, and I am looking at new games to buy on Switch eventually. I am getting through my backlog, so maybe I will actually go back and play it. So maybe it's better than what I think it is. Who knows? Yes. Kingdom Hearts should have had a mix between Disney and Final Fantasy characters. Like, I don't understand why they relegated the Final Fantasy characters to cameo appearances and then not utilize them at all. Like, they were amazing in 1. They were a lot of fun in 1, and then suddenly they weren't there anymore. Like, 2, they just sort of existed in one world, and then 3, they're not there at all. It's just completely despicable. I am not a fan of how that was handled at all. Like, Cloud should have played a bigger role in the plot. Like, Squall should have been there. Like, why are there not more Final Fantasy VI characters? Like, why is there no one from the first 6 games? It's so frustrating. It really is. I was not impressed with Kingdom Hearts. Oof. All right, I think I'm about ready to go. So if that's all there is, all right, let me check my Twitter to make sure that everything's all good. Maybe I should check 4chan one last time to make sure nothing's changed in the past couple of days. In the past hour. Let's see. I don't think anything happens. Yeah, I think I'm ready to go. I'm hungry. I want to get something to eat. All right. So thank you for tuning in. Oh, I guess I should show my books. Please support my writing career. I am an indie novelist that has a new book up for pre-order. Cruel and Beautiful. It is a fire story. I'm really anxious to get going. You can tell I'm kind of half-assing this. Let's see. And then Eye of the Dragon. Awesome. Have I talked enough about Eye of the Dragon? That video I uploaded went live, right? The one where I talked about like the sale. Yeah. Eye of the Dragon has done well. I am shocked. Like, I am legitimately shocked at how positive people are towards it. I am just, all the great feedback I've gotten, it's wonderful. I am so just enamored. I hope Cruel and Beautiful does half as well. To be honest with you, I would be honored if Cruel and Beautiful goes on to do as well as Eye of the Dragon. I guess I could talk a little bit about Cruel and Beautiful. Have I not talked about that on stream before? I think I have. It is a story about a vampire who feigns a romantic relationship with a human for her own gain. It's definitely a lot of fun, definitely rather different, and it's out for pre-order right now. Fans of what should I compare it to? It's some sort of dark romance fantasy. I don't know what else I would compare it to. Like, essentially, I think Cruel and Beautiful can be compared to some sort of like bizarre, oof. I think I've already have talked about Cruel and Beautiful actually. Because I'm just like I'm remembering. Oh yeah, I've talked about this before about how like he was inspired by abusive relationships. How it has like some sort of like how it has a unique take on it. I guess I could talk about. Yeah, it's too straightforward of a series. That's kind of it, to be honest with you. Like it's very, very straightforward. You know, vampire uses human. uh, yeah, so please check that out. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you all next time. Thank you.